I think it's, there you go. You got it.
All right, Adam, or excuse me, Mr. Holland. Mr.
All right.
Chairman,
Well, thank you very much. Well, let me just say, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. And at this point, I would like to call the Opiate Abatement Authority's Finance Committee meeting to order. Good afternoon. I would like to welcome the committee members and all those others who are joining us online virtually as well today. What we would like to do is record in the minutes that the following members are virtually present. And let me see if I can see who we have virtually present. We have Delegate Ballard. We have Dr. Melton. We have, who else do we have? And we have myself as well. So we have 3 members currently present, which is a quorum at this point. So, and we have other members who are virtual as well. Thank you for joining us today. As you well know, this meeting is being recorded, and both the recording and draft minutes will be posted to the OAA website. Today's agenda includes a presentation by the authority's finance director, Adam Rosatelli, who will provide a staff work plan update and an overview of the revised settlement payment estimates and budgeted distributions for cities, counties, and state agencies, as well as amended operating and administrative budgets for the current biennium, fiscal years 2023 and 2024, and a brief overview of the accounting mechanisms used to track fund distributions. Secondly, Mr. Rosatelli will provide an update on the process and timelines to review and select a financial advisor to assist the authority in securitization, feasibility, and investment analysis and periodic financial advisory services. This will also include the review of a draft statement of needs for the committee's consideration. However, before Mr. Rosatelli provides his presentation, we need to vote to approve the prior committee meeting minutes. I should ask, which are dated December 20th, 2022 and January 10th, 2023. Has the members of the committee reviewed the minutes? And are you prepared to give a motion? Assuming it was sent out.
They're posted online, I think. I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Melton. May I have a second? Well, I'll second that motion, Madam. And of course, are there any other discussion? Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor, sign of aye. 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 And of course, Delegate Ballard, if he's on still. So we have 2 votes, and of course, the minutes are approved as such. Thank you very much. Okay, now with that, I'd like to ask Adam to share his presentation with the committee. I'll quickly note that at the conclusion of the presentation during the new business portion of today's agenda, the committee will take a vote to approve the amended fiscal year 23-24 budgets so that Adam can proceed at this point. Adam, are you ready to proceed?
I am ready to proceed, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And just to remind you, Mr. Chairman, the in the event that there's a quorum is not available, then we would have to delay. I could postpone the vote on the budget to a later date.
Yeah, thank you. A Delegate Ballard is on, however, his voice is muted as well as his visual screen, but Delegate Ballard is on. And maybe what I do is send him a note to let him know we'll need his vote as we need 3. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Let me try to send him a note.
Well, thank you, Mr.
Unless someone else can,
Chairman.
I'll try, but unless someone else can, send him a note.
We can, yes, sir. We can send the note.
Yeah, send him a note.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Chairman,
thank you.
Yeah, somehow my audio went out there and it just came back in. It sounded like you took a vote.
Yes, we did. And can we add you as an affirmative vote for the minutes?
Yes, correct. Please do.
So ordered. Thank you, Mr. Delegate Ballard. We
Nope.
appreciate you
Nope.
being here. And thank you for staying with us as long as you can to hear the presentations, as we do have to vote on two items. Budget.
I'll absolutely. I'll be here as long as I can. Thank you.
Thank you kindly, sir. We appreciate that. Mr. Rosatelli, please proceed.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Tony, you could advance the slide if you don't mind. I'll just go right to the agenda that I'll quickly go through. So to begin, staff work plan update, just let you know what we've been doing and what we plan to do in the coming weeks and months as it relates to the OAA's finances and kind of operational procedures. Provide an update on the settlement revenue and the budget, which is going to be the bulk of the presentation. Give an overview of how we're planning to track and account for grant distributions, both internally and through the Commonwealth's financial accounting system, and then provide an update on where we are with respect to selecting a financial advisor, and then close out with next steps. So next slide, please, Tony. Okay, so this is where we are with this. So you can see we're happy to announce that an MOU was finalized. VDH transferred their administrative and support services to DBHDS, and that's the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. And the OAA established an MOU between the authority and DBHDS that kind of clarified those administrative services that would be provided effective April 1st. There is going to be, so following today's meeting, so May, June timeframe, the revised settlement payments and operating and administrative budgets are going to be revised and will facilitate appropriations being administratively provided as these grants are beginning to be distributed to cities and counties and state agencies when the application periods close and those grants are awarded. And then provide an update on the financial advisors and draft statement of needs. So that's presently where we are. And then moving forward, May, June, working with the administration and the legislature to communicate priorities. You know, there was no budget was passed, right? So it's expected that there were likely that will be revisited in June. And we plan to work with those officials to express the OA's priorities with respect to opioid abatement and remediation. May, June timeframe. So there is no, currently there's just an October 2nd meeting of the Finance Committee scheduled. Given where we are, we plan to select a financial advisor in June. And it would be good to have a July meeting that hasn't yet been scheduled, just to have the financial advisor introduce themselves, kind of introduce their methodologies and so forth before they proceed with the analyses of securitization and investment options. So that would preferably occur sometime in July again, and we'll reach out in the coming days to attempt to schedule that. And then for the October 2nd meeting that is already scheduled, staff in the interim is going to be developing and finalizing the internal financial policies and procurement type policies for the committee's consideration, and then presented to the board, full board later for adoption. And then at that October 2nd meeting, that's where the financial advisor would present, at least preliminarily, their report and recommendations on securitization and investments. And that would give time then for the committee to weigh in on that. And then looking at the November 14th meeting, we would begin to finalize appropriations for the caboose, which is the FY24 budget, and then looking forward to fiscal years 25 and 26. So the OAA's appropriation could be included in the budget, in the governor's introduced budget, that really kind of reflects what our appropriation should be. And then that's where the financial advisor would also present those their recommendations with respect to securitization and investment. And that would also provide ample time between November and the General Assembly session in the event that the board were to move forward with the securitization option to create the kind of legislative infrastructure through a bill to be introduced at the 2024 General Assembly session to accomplish that. Next slide, unless there are questions, Mr. Chairman.
No, proceed, please.
Great. Okay, so looking at the updated estimated settlement payments and the budget. So there have just been a couple of very slight changes. Nothing too big. So the estimated payments through 2042 are $604.2 million. So this graph shows the FY23 and FY24 totals and the percentages related to each of the distributions of $148.3 million. So the current fund balance, so that's actually what's been deposited to the opioid abatement fund to date, and that's pretty recent as of last week, $73.7 million. So that reflects the McKinsey payments, distributors, Janssen and Mallinckrodt settlements received to date. And there is potentially one outstanding FY23 Walmart settlement payment that could be theoretically received in the current fiscal year, but it's likely that it would actually be sometime after July 1st. So the settlements that are currently in the process of being finalized and are very close are the retail pharmacies, that's Walmart, Walgreens, and CVS, and then manufacturers Teva and Allergan. So there are a couple of bankruptcies in process that where there's less information. That's kind of, it's got, it's a mercy of the court. And so those are Purdue and Endo, Purdue being the largest of those two. Endo's a much smaller amount. But there's actually, Tony shared something related to what's going on. It seems like there is some pressure on the courts to begin to finalize what's going on here. So this was originally heard in appeals court April 29, 2022. So it's been over a year now. And the issue is whether or not the Sacklers can be found individually responsible and sued individually, right? So it appears as though once the appeals court has made a determination on whether this would absolve them of those individual suits, they can move forward. And that should begin the process. And it shouldn't be too much longer, I would think, after that is figured out. But anyway, that's where we are with settlements, and we'll provide any updates as necessary as things move along. We finalize them, several months down the road. Next slide.
Thank you, Adam. Any questions or comments from any of the committee members at this point? None?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
No
proceed,
questions.
Adam. Thank you.
I think, did someone have a question? Oh, okay.
No question.
Delegate ballot.
Proceed.
Great. So this is, and I apologize for the kind of small print, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I wanted to show kind of the entire timeline of the estimated annual payments and the budgeted expenditures by category, by grant category. So you can kind of see how it's spread out. And I won't spend a lot of time because the subsequent slides kind of go into greater detail about how the mechanics of how you, the estimated annual revenue in 1 year, the remaining balance, how that carries forward and creates a new revised fund balance, and how those revenues are then kind of distributed over a multi-year period. When we describe that measured budget approach, that's essentially that in action, kind of those revised settlement amounts or revised balances moving forward and then being drawn down over a multi-year period to accommodate consistency in funding and multi-year project awards in these first application cycles. So anyway, we can go ahead, and if you don't mind, if there are no questions on this, I show greater, I kind of home in on the 23 through 25 and show some examples. And Tony, just click once more forward, and then it'll activate. There you go. Thank you. So you can see in FY23 the delta between the expenses and the revenues there. It's pretty obvious, right? So that $72.4 million is carrying forward into FY24 to not only align with the application, the grants cycle, right? So the discretionary grants for the regional projects and state agency awards are occurring on or after July 1, which is in FY24, right? So there's that expenditures aren't occurring in that year. They're moving forward. And then that blue line is the revenues, you can see, the annual revenues. So that $72.4 million is carrying forward and spread over multiple years. And you can see the stacked bar charts beginning in FY25, expenses are actually exceeding estimated settlement revenue in each one of those years. So imagine if we were doing kind of an all-or-one approach on an annual basis, those expenses would be much lower in each one of those subsequent years. And so what this does is it again aligns with kind of demand really from a local level. There hasn't been huge demand thus far that would necessitate the amount of the settlement revenues in the current fiscal year. And so it accommodates again those multi-year project awards and kind of aligns with demand and their planning schedule. So, are there any questions? I know that's a little complicated, but,
Adam, this is Tony.
yes,
You know,
sir.
I think this is really worth just taking a pause for a minute because this committee, Finance Committee, voted back in December to take a measured approach where we spread out the expenditures for certain types of competitive grants over a number of years to provide consistency from one year to the next,
Mhm.
instead of just spending all the money that comes in as it comes in. And so this is a conservative approach that allows many years of a sort of a stable level of funding for these big picture, big ticket projects. And so this is what that approach that you voted on in December will give you moving forward.
Thank you, Tom. You're absolutely right, Tony. That's what we mentioned, and that was even prior to securitization as well. Prior to that process, which is what we'll contemplate, we'll look at this summer later on, as Adam mentioned. So thank you for that point.
All right, so this is a really detailed look, and I apologize. I would have been running this presentation, and there are a lot of animations that require clicks. So Tony, just start clicking away until it doesn't click anymore, and don't advance. Try not to advance a slide. I'll tell you when to stop. Just go ahead and keep clicking, and then stop. Thank you. Yep, there we go. Okay, so anyway, it would have been better had I been doing it. I had a whole thing planned. But anyway, so you can see, this is just kind of showing how the settlement revenues are kind of flowing through on an annual basis, carrying forward, being added to the next year's estimated balances, and how we kind of, like, as Tony described, kind of that measured approach where we're kind of spreading that settlement revenue over a period of years to get consistency in funding and also accommodate multi-year project awards for localities, right? So you can see in FY23 you have the $86.8 million. And you can also see, just looking at the top, 23, 24, 25, you can see how those revenues are already really beginning to decline, right? Because there are front-loaded payments in FY23 for Janssen and Walmart. And to some degree, the distributors settlement too had a fairly front-loaded, the first payment was a little bit larger than the other payment. So anyway, that 86.8 million minus the 14.6 million in the FY23 column yields a revenue differential of 72.2 million. You see that arrow pointing up, adding that to the 61.4 million, you get a new revised beginning balance of $133.7 million.
Great.
So you can see that if we begin to really budget for the discretionary grant awards again, because those were delayed till July 1 to align with this application cycle, July 1 23. So you can see we really start to push out the money there. So it's at 59.5 million roughly. And then if you look at that difference, so you can see you're really just essentially whittling down that 23 revenue that's carrying forward. Again, it carries forward. FY25 estimated settlement payments have already dropped to 35.6 million at that time. But given that 23, given that we've kind of preserved that funding for the kind of the future early year projects, that carries forward. So you've got 109.8 million now, and you're just kind of whittling it down, right? So on and so forth until I believe FY34, where settlement payments and expenditures match identically until it completely tapers off and there's no settlement payments that are going to be received anymore, right? So that's kind of a look. I know that was kind of a lot of detail, but just giving you an idea of what this looks like, the financial mechanics of what the measured budget approach that you voted on actually looks like, kind of mechanically. So unless there are questions, we can go to the next slide.
Okay, go for it.
Great. So this is a look at the FY23 and 24 operating and administrative budget. So as you know, this is a high level look. So as you know, the OAA's administrative costs come out of the unrestricted portion of the budget, right? So this actually goes into detail because I know there were some questions about the kind of the number of employees, administrative costs as it relates to overall expenditures and that sort of thing. So looking at where we are, about 95% of the total budget is used for its intended purpose, right? That's for the grant awards to individual cities and counties and to the regional projects, state agency grants, and then the unrestricted or unallotted portion of as it's reflected here that can be used to augment or create, fund new projects. So the OA's personnel, again, this is over a 2-year period. So it's not 2.1 for personnel each year. That's over a 2-year period.
Okay.
So you can see that the administrative expense relative to budget is about 5.3%. And I know that doesn't necessarily, you need to kind of put that in context to see what that means. So typically in business, to kind of gauge the appropriateness of overall administrative costs, a sales to administrative expense ratio is calculated. So it's essentially a measure of your administrative costs relative to revenue. So if you were to consider settlement revenue, in this case, our OA's operating costs would be about 2%. So 2% of every settlement dollar coming in is used by administrative costs. And another measure might be maybe more appropriately is grant funded governmental entities. And that is for state and federal government spend on average, that's about 10%. So just to put into context, I think, and provide some just kind of a benchmark to see how we're performing from the cost perspective to administer the types of programs that we're trying to do. Trying to obviously being mindful of the number of staff and costs that go into accomplishing the OA's objectives. So just wanted to present that.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam. And that's quite reasonable from my perspective. We discussed this early on regarding this. So members of the committee discussed having, and so this number is reasonable, quite reasonable. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Great. So this is, this is really pretty granular level detail, but I thought it was interesting to show you all the level of care that is going into making sure that these grants are meticulously tracked, both internally and again in the Commonwealth's financial system. And credit to James and Charlie for devising this kind of alphanumeric coding system that can be accommodated in the state's financial system. So we have worked with DBHDS to create these project codes, and those are kind of dummy project codes there that would be assigned unique project codes. And then additional agency fields to accommodate these alphanumeric coding, FIPS codes. So you'd be able to identify grant type, the project code specific to the distribution that are created. So you can track the locality to which it's distributed, the DBHDS region in which the locality is situated, and then for cooperative partnerships, the number of participating localities. So good level of detail. And what this does is, because you'll have these uniform, rather than using qualitative sort of entry describing what happened with each one of these grant awards, because there's uniform information, we can then collect, aggregate this data and run reports and really get a look at how the money's being distributed and for what purposes.
Yeah, Adam, you're right. Thank you for that, because it will be important to ensure, be able to respond that we're being equitable and distributing the resources as equitable as possible throughout the state and throughout areas as the need is greatest or what have you. So it's important that we are able to do that and say that we're doing it equitably.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think everybody knows this, but it's probably worth getting it into the recording, into the minutes, that anytime you have an entity such as the Opioid Abatement Authority that's managing a large amount of public dollars, one of the greatest risks is that we could be seen to not have managed our accounting well. And so I know that this is a lot of detail, but I know members of the board, members of the committee are very concerned, and appropriately so, to make sure that as we account for each dollar that goes out, that we're able to do that in a professional manner, and that when the inevitable audits come, that we will be not only prepared, but that we'll be very prepared. Thank you.
I'm very pleased to hear that. Thank you so very much. That was one of my greatest concerns, that we can account for it and be prepared to speak to it. Thank you. And we know audit time is coming as well. Thank you.
Great. So now just providing an update on where we are with selecting the financial advisor. So staff worked with Virginia Treasury to identify prospective financial advisors. firms that they had experience working with, who have advised the Secretary of Finance, Treasury on bond issuances and provided investment guidance. So we got a good list of candidates. And we are going to begin reaching out to these folks, and the plan is to select a financial advisor again in June. And again, there's going to be three things that are going to be in the statement of needs. It's going to be the securitization analysis that we've discussed, a broad investment analysis under both securitization and non-securitization scenarios, right? As well as periodic financial advisory or consulting services. Just kind of check where we are with respect, kind of be a liaison with VRS when we choose, if and when we choose to start to invest funds, and in what manner to give updates. So there's kind of an objective third-party financial investment type experts that can advise us on how to best proceed and measures to take, right? So that would be, a couple, 3 times a year potentially. So that is also contained within the statement of needs. So again, the hired in June, new finance committee meeting that hasn't yet been scheduled. They present in July, and then staff would work with the financial advisor from that time all the way up through September, when they would at least have preliminarily completed a report with their recommendations in it, and then that would be delivered at the October 2nd meeting for the committee to draw their conclusions and maybe make recommendations to the board for approval. And then preferably and I think this would have to be the case, is that the financial advisor would come back in November and present all of that information again to the full board. And then the committee would also make a report, I would think, on their recommendations after having received the report at the October 2nd meeting. And then the board would make a final vote on proceeding with a longer term financial strategy, which may or may not include securitization.
Okay, very good. Thank
So
you.
that's the timeline.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes, sir. And this is the last slide. So again, I
Okay.
think I touched on most of this in the beginning, but again, the staff is going to work with DPB to administratively adjust our appropriation as needed until we true it up for inclusion in the governor's introduced budget for the next biennium. Work with administration and legislative staff to continue to advocate for the OAA's priorities regarding opioid abatement in the budget and legislatively in this coming special session when they amend the budget. Again, the financial advisor and assisting in the securitization and investment analyses. And then we already discussed the July and October meetings and all those items that you're going to consider at either July or October before going to the board for a vote.
Okay,
And then anything else that comes up in the interim, I'm sure something else will pop up that we'll probably put on the agenda for either July or October. But as of now, that's what we have outlined.
okay, very good. Now, item 5, any comments regarding the fiscal 23-24 operating administrative budgets, because we need to have a vote on that while we have a quorum.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Delegate Ballard just texted me that he's signing off.
Oh, my.
See, the box is still engaged, but Delegate
Yeah,
Ballard,
he's
you
still
know.
engaged. Yeah.
I'm
he's still
here if we
engaged.
need to take a vote now. I have about a minute.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Can we move to vote on this, and then that way the delegate can leave? How about that? I entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 23-24 operating administrative budgets as presented.
I'll
So
make that
moved.
motion.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor sign by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Delegate Ballard, are you affirmative?
Yes, I'm an aye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's
You're welcome.
approved. The item is approved. Budget's approved. Thank you very much. I think that's the only vote we have to take today, so we can just talk about, we did next steps. Anything else, Adam, you need to?
No,
present?
sir. I don't have anything.
Yes,
I'm
present.
available to answer any questions that any of the committee members may have.
Okay.
And then there's just a little bit of time for discussion if there needs to be discussion, but that I don't have anything else to present.
Well, let me just take this opportunity to say thank you so very much for all the hard work you all have done. Adam, Anthony, I appreciate it. And James, you all have done a tremendous job financially. This is a huge undertaking. And let me just say, I tremendously appreciate our oversight in accounting and accountability, because one thing we want to always be able to say that what we did well and did equitably, so that everyone is treated fairly and properly. So thank you so very much for that. If there are any other comments or questions, please chime in now before we adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, just one minor logistical item.
Mhm.
Adam mentioned that we would like to circle back up with the Finance Committee in July.
Yes.
And that does not have to be, we'll make that meeting open to the public. But because there'll be no votes taken at that meeting, this is really just an update. It's informational only
Yes.
to give the committee a chance to see and hear from the selected financial advisor. But no vote will be put to the committee. And what that means is that we will be able to conduct that meeting virtually, which I think will be really helpful considering July, when we're already spread apart by several hundred miles, plus people have travel plans in the summer. So with the indulgence of the committee, we'll start working on a date that's agreeable to the four of you to be able to do that virtually. And hopefully it shouldn't be too big of a lift for everybody to calendar that item.
Excellent. We appreciate that, because it's, I should also say that the work of this committee and this board, the OP Authority, is so very critical to a lot of Virginians and a lot of our cities and counties. So thank you so very much. And I appreciate all of your time today. Thank you as well, Delegate Ballard, Dr. Melton. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for what you're doing. We appreciate so very much. So great. Let's keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Take care. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.